Hey, friendles. It's Kendall. It's been about 2 months since my last video, unless you count my shorts. My video output's never really been all that consistent, and neither has my social media presence, so, we need to have a talk. The past couple years have really been something else. While they're nowhere near the worst years of my life or anything, those were my developmental years. They involved a lot of soul-searching, reflection, coming to terms with stuff. I'm not entirely sure how to start this, but I've really had to accept that I struggle with my mental health more than I'm willing to admit. Which is ironic to say because this is also probably the best my mental health has ever been. It's more that I've been carrying a lot of compounded trauma from my life, and recently I've had to confront how it affected my self-image and my self-worth. Okay, might as well just outright say it. Timestamp on the screen if you don't want to hear about some personal stuff. I grew up in domestic abuse for over 2 decades, involving misogyny, racism, substances, and extreme narcissism. And that's all the detail you're getting about it. As for the effects, I became hypervigilant, anxious, I cried easily, had consistent nightmares about specific incidents, and I really did not see myself reaching 40. Yeah, I was basically stuck in fight or flight all the way up until about late 2023. I learned in therapy that all of these symptoms are symptoms of CPTSD. I know some of my old art school classmates also watch my videos, so if you guys were ever wondering why I'd be crying at my work desk alone or staying really late at school to avoid going home, yeah, this is why. Ironically, I was always told I should be grateful for the life I had. And while the key to happiness is oftentimes to be grateful for the things that you do have, I want to say this out loud for the people in the back. You should never show gratitude for abuse. And the good an abuser does will never override the abuse. Okay, to elaborate somewhat further, when you grow up having your femininity, your culture, your interests, your worth as a human being, and just unchangeable parts of yourself consistently demonized, you just really start to internalize that kind of thing deeply. Even if you logically know that none of it is true. And it also didn't help that I got bullied a lot through school, pretty much all the way up into community college. Yeah, I was the weird kid. So while I was in art school, I was the first person in my family to basically go, yeah, no, I'm not living like this anymore. So I got prescribed some meds and I started seeing a therapist. And even though I was still living in just complete and utter chaos, starting medication finally felt like I could see clearly for the first time. Ever. You know, some of you might have already caught on to the fact that I have ADHD as well. And while I take medication primarily for trauma-related stuff, I've never found an ADHD medicine that didn't royally alter my mood in a very destructive way. So I just don't take any ADHD medicine, and it honestly kind of explains why my last year of art school was honestly kind of cringe. I was kind of manic in my last year of art school, honestly. Despite most of what I've described technically being in the past, I've just really had to accept that it still does affect me a lot, even after a lot of healing. Okay, I need to better explain what I mean. So my video output and art uploads have always been kind of sparse, and they've definitely been more sparse than I would have liked the past couple years, and I used to just chalk it up to things like being a perfectionist, learning editing software, or wanting to take my time, all that kind of thing. And to be fair, none of that stuff is necessarily a bad thing. Where it becomes a problem is when it turns into paralysis. And for me, it would become this depression paralysis where just something inside of me would just repeat over and over again and say, I can't do it. And that's kind of just something I'm realizing now has overwhelmed my life a lot more than I thought. So with the video editing specifically, I'd get really agitated trying to condense footage or just get really intimidated by how long video editing would seem to take, at least in my mind. And then I'd overthink clipping things like filler footage, just trying to figure out what's worth showing and what's not worth showing. And I think this is very telling in a lot of my earlier videos. I really didn't have a good idea of what was worth showing. And also, people who know me in real life know that I tend to be kind of long-winded when it comes to talking and wanting to show and tell about something. And, when it comes to my art, a lot of these negative feelings, they were much worse. A lot worse. There were days that I would sit at my computer for hours, like literally hours, just trying to draw something, and nothing would happen. Maybe a few strokes or something, maybe a sketch, but I would just be overwhelmed by this overwhelming performance anxiety that would just bust my nuts into stagnation. Did I really just say that? And the worst part is that, it came in waves, just unpredictable waves. One day I'd just be drawing nonstop without a care in the world and not even thinking about it. And the next day I'd just suddenly forget how to draw because I just hated how I was sketching or lining or rendering or coloring or whatever. It was just always something. And that's kind of been an on and off thing since around 2020. And kind of my whole life, just in different fonts. It's funny because I used to doodle in black pen like it was nothing. But then my first drawing class in art school just gave me this whole pen versus pencil crisis because I was just so used to pen, then having to transition to pencil. It was just... Okay, it doesn't sound like a big deal when I say it out loud, but it was just stagnating at the time. Another thing I've had to admit to myself, and I kind of think some of y'all probably fall into this trap as well, is how much I doom scroll when I'm depressed. And when I'd be doom scrolling, I would end up comparing my work to other people's, just watching other doll artists and other creatives just skyrocket in their social media, just getting all the money, the attention, and just the praise for putting their heart into something like that. And then I would be wondering, why isn't my work like this? Or why am I not living that life, Just that kind of, comparison can really be the thief of joy, you know what I mean? But the truth of the matter is that I just haven't put myself out there to the same extent that other creatives have, and I kind of think that's a similar trap a lot of us probably fall into. So, I guess it can all be summarized as this, depressed, procrastination, fear-induced, perfectionism, paralysis, carousel, mind prison, circus, electric boogaloo. And it kind of begs the question, if making videos and stuff sounds kind of miserable from everything I just described, why do I keep doing it? Okay, to answer that, there are parts of it that I do genuinely enjoy, and there's parts that I don't. I think that comes with everything, honestly. And figuring out what I enjoy is just part of the video creating process. Also, finishing a project, whether it's a video or a doll or whatever it was, even a school project, it would give me a sense of accomplishment just knowing, hey, I did this thing and I finished it. Even if it did take me 6 months or 3 days, whether it's because of my own doubts and my own fears or because life decided to throw hands for some reason. I promise I'm not trying to pull a yandere div on you guys or anything. So I gotta rewind a little bit. I originally started this channel during my senior year of art school, and it was kind of this portfolio time management kind of experiment. And yeah, those older videos were honestly really long-winded and kind of boring. But at the same time, in the back of my head, I've kind of always known that like starting a company in the modern day is a lot more realistic if you have like some kind of online following and basically enough ad revenue or financial backing from your followers, that kind of thing. Basically, starting a company is a lot more realistic by putting your thoughts and ideas online. This is not coming out the way I hoped. But anyways, that's kind of the dream for me, is that I've dreamed of like starting my own toy and multimedia company because I just have a lot of stories and toys and doll lines that just like sit in my head and in my sketchbooks that I want to make physical and I want to put out there one day. And I always tell myself I'll share when it's ready. And, I really need to ask myself, is there really ever going to be a moment where I am fully ready? Probably not. So, I really ought to get on to showing y'all what I can do. So that kind of rambly diatribe kind of led to these realizations I had. So it led to like 2 specific realizations. Okay, so in truth, I never wanted to be an influencer, and I don't want to die with my ideas. Okay, I gotta explain that first one. I am actually a really private person, which people who knew me growing up probably find pretty ironic because I used to be a chronic oversharer. At the beginning of making vids, recording voiceover felt very nerve-wracking and overexposing, and God knows singing would be terrifying. The second point kind of blends into the first, but I've been keeping so much in my head for so long that it, oh my god, I can't believe I'm about to say this, that it took writing robots fanfiction of all things to realize I don't want to do that anymore. That is a wild sentence, I know. It's probably because I started writing that story not long after somebody passed away. And I guess that can make you realize how short life is. But I have so much I want to share, and I think I've slowly been building towards being okay with doing so, even if it's not perfect. I just don't want to hesitate putting myself out there anymore, just like I've been hesitating recording this voiceover. Okay, so now that y'all know how much of a hot mess I am, let me tell you what I've been doing to try and fix it. One of the most helpful things has honestly just been doodling in sketchbooks again. So if something comes out bad, I just don't erase it. I just write ew next to it and move on. I also just use whatever I have on me, whether it's a pen or a pencil. The point just became doodling for fun again and relearning to enjoy the process. Because isn't that why we all started creating in the first place? Because we liked it? Okay, so when translating that to my digital art, I've just had to accept that my brush needs some sort of opacity variation, and that line art is going to be a hit or miss no matter what. If anything, I just tell myself that if somebody wants perfect line art, they really ought to just use a vector software because that's as close as perfect as they're realistically ever going to get. Another thing, stop zooming in. I see you, girl. I know y'all are zooming into the finest microscopic details trying to tighten everything up. Stop doing that. And instead, try zooming out and zoom out and see the entire image as a whole instead of obsessing over every single little tiny detail. And once you can see the image as a whole, that's going to be a very positive mind shift for you, because I know it was for me. It also just made the process a lot more enjoyable when I could see the whole image and not like a little piece of the image. A lot of this basically levels down to trust the process. But don't just learn to trust it, learn to love it again. That's the same thing I tell myself when it comes to styling my hair. Okay, so how have I actually applied this mindset to my videos? One of the biggest things I've been consciously reminding myself is that I do not have to record everything. Some parts of making dolls and toys is honestly really repetitive, sanding especially, and y'all don't need to see me sand something for the upteenth time. So to stop myself from getting overwhelmed during editing, I've started giving myself smaller, specific tasks for the day, while reminding myself that if something doesn't get finished immediately, it's not the end of the world. Like, one day I'll just condense footage, another day I'll write the script, then I'll do the voiceover probably that day or the next, and then I'll do like the fun edits on successive days. Just breaking it into chunks instead of trying to brute force everything at once helps me not get burned out, and it also helps me not procrastinate because I'm overwhelmed. I also bought a new camera, which was not my choice at all. So before this, I had been using an old iPhone, which had previously been stepped on, and could barely hold a charge for an hour before powering down. And it recently gave out on me completely. So this new camera has a very limited recording time and battery life, which turned out to be a good thing because now I need to be selective of what I record and what's worth sharing. I'm also trying to migrate from Final Cut to Adobe Premiere because Final Cut file sizes are huge and it gives my computer indigestion, so I want to try to get used to Adobe Premiere. But it's similar, but there is still kind of a learning curve to it all. And like at the end of the day, a lot of this kind of comes down to dedicating bits of time to your projects, even if it's just like 10 minutes after a long day of work, or maybe it's 10 hours on one of your days off. Like, passion is one thing, but dedication is another. I also know my toy making process can sometimes look like complete chaotic trial and error nonsense, and I've been thinking about ways to streamline that a bit. Since toy making videos can also take a while, I've been wanting to branch out into other kinds of content as well. Things like experimental animated storytime videos, because I'm sure a lot of you would get a kick out of what I call the Eagle story. I've also thought about doing singing covers of some of my favorite international songs, or even videos where I just talk about whatever's on my mind because I think a lot of thoughts. And sometimes the right topic makes it hard for me to shut up. Maybe that kind of thing would also help me be less self-conscious. I don't know. Earlier I mentioned how my upbringing really cemented this belief of I can't do this or I'm not worth better, on top of some not great work experiences. Those could be story times of their own, honestly. But weirdly enough, relearning how to enjoy creating has probably been the biggest thing to help me challenge that mindset. Just little things like singing for fun, making my mom a birthday cake, just doodling in a little tiny sketchbook, crocheting, just little things like that. That kind of thing just gives life purpose, and it helped me relearn how to enjoy working on projects I care about. Things like my personal work, portfolio stuff, freelance work, character design, visual development, just all of it. I'm not going to act like it's been some sort of magical overnight transformation, because it really isn't. Relearning how to enjoy the creative process and actually believe in myself has just been this really back and forth battle over the past year. Some days are great, others not so much, but this is the kind of thing that takes time, isn't it? I've kind of been hinting at this whole video that this relearning to enjoy art and stop sabotaging myself thing has been brewing in my head for a while. But if you've followed me consistently on social media, you'd probably know that this year has been a lot. Okay, timestamp on the screen if you don't want to hear about death and stuff. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Over the past year, 3 people and 2 of my pets have passed away. The first death was unexpected, and I genuinely had no idea she was sick. And to some extent, I still wrestle with a lot of conflicted feelings about this one, because there's just a lot of regret when it comes to how I wish I spent my time with her and how I wish I was more present in the moment with her, if that makes sense. A few days after that, my dog Bear passed away. So he was a 16-year-old dog, and he held on for a really long time. He was a really good boy, probably the best of boys, and I miss him sometimes. Towards the end of 2025, another person passed away, and this is probably going to sound really callous when I say this, but I saw it coming. She was older, and she was a genuinely very lovely person to talk to. I really loved spending time with her. And I think part of why I handled that loss so much easier compared to the person that came before her was because I think I was just a lot more mentally present when I was with her. Like, I spent my time with her and talked to her, and I was actually there, if that makes sense. So I just don't have any regrets. 2026 started, and my uncle died suddenly in February. And I had a job interview the very next day. Yeah, okay, what really messed me up about this one is that it felt extremely sudden. He was only in his 40s, and he was conscious and walking around, even though he was sick. And then hours later, he was gone. I genuinely thought he would wake up and be okay. And hearing my mom cry, "No puede ser," because her younger brother is dead, that's gonna probably stick with me for the rest of my life. And I can't imagine what that felt like for her. I'm sorry. About a month later, my mom was in Mexico, and she and family called me for my birthday. And at some point in the call, she mentioned that some younger family members were still asking about her uncle. And at that point, I just started crying. And I kept thinking that somebody needs to explain to these kids that when people die, they don't come back. So I said something along the lines of, you need to explain to them that when people die, they don't come back. Just in a kid-friendly way. And then my brother, from across the room, in his infinite wisdom, goes, "Of course they do. Haven't you seen Five Nights at Freddy's?" Oh, man. Sometime after that, my dog George passed away. Another old man. He was pushing 16 as well, so not as old as Bear. And unlike my uncle, he was expected. Similar to Bear, they just looked like they were sleeping when they died. My brother was the one who found him when he passed away, and we were both working at the time, so we had to wrap him up and put him in our fridge. God, that sounds awful saying it like that. But that's what we had to do because we just couldn't bury him immediately, you know? But once we both had time off, that's when we went and buried him next to Bear. You know, I miss them both a lot. They were the best of friends when they were still here. And I like to think that they still are now. So yeah, this year has really packed a lot in terms of character development. Despite how heavy all of that was, it's weirdly become a huge part of this mindset I've been developing of life is short, the time to live it is now, and the worst they can say is no kind of mentality. Going through all of that while simultaneously having this gigantic perfectionism self-worth crisis was definitely a lot, but truthfully, I have survived much worse than this already, which the mini lore dump at the beginning probably implied. Sometimes I just need to ground myself and remember that I'm no longer in the situation I grew up in. I have some freelance jobs, a part-time job, a place to live, food to eat, and a family I'm safe with. At this point in my life, I'm in this weird position where I'm almost 30. Yes, I'm older than I sound. But also I feel like my life has barely started. Like, mentally, I somehow feel 12 and 50 at the same time. Part of that comes from feeling inexperienced in things that people with more stable upbringings got to experience, while also feeling weirdly exhausted from things I did experience. And when I feel left behind in life, I do have to remind myself that I did not grow up with the same stability a lot of people had. Some of this stuff is going to affect me for a really long time to come, and some of my experiences in creative industries have been demoralizing, which is probably the nicest way to put that. And because of my trauma, I know I tend to take perceived betrayal and injustice far more to heart than I probably should, but it also helps to remember that I'm just not alone in that. Neurotypicals, neurodivergence, Creative industries, non-creative industries, people of all types have had experiences that made them question themselves, whether it's work-related, family-related, school, etc. I know a lot of us right now probably feel like the world is moving on without us. But I try to think about it like this. If the world is going to leave you behind, might as well leave them something to look back at. Okay, this sculpt is honestly pretty cringe, but I still thought it was worth showing. Thanks for watching. I gotta admit, I only feel comfortable posting about all this because I don't really expect that many people to watch it, and it's kind of taken a while since this stuff is not easy to talk about, and I wanted to make sure I said everything on my mind. I'm currently working on a Ragatha doll, which I'm hoping to have a video on by the end of June at the latest. I also might start testing some short storytime short video thingies before eventually telling bigger stories, just to kind of test the waters of it all. Anyways, I hope you're all doing well, and remember, the world wouldn't be the same without you. You matter, you're valued, and you make the world a better place every day. Shalom, everyone! Make the sound you were making.
Don't look at me like that. Can't. No, it's okay, honey. She's like almost crying. It's okay, honey. It's okay, honey. It's okay. Thank you.